With their new flagship releases, 3 budget TWS brands are looking to dispel the notion that you need to spend big to get high quality audio. And they're doing it in style too, with each of them using a slightly alternative selection of driver arrangement to achieve the desired effect. With 2 balanced armatures and a single dynamic driver, SoundPEATS are going for detail and clarity with their H3. QCY's N70 pairs a MEMS driver with a dynamic driver, aiming to give you precision and fast transients. Meanwhile, Moondrop with their Golden Ages 2 are all about that natural timbre and tonality that you get with their 13mm planar. It's too simplistic to say that more drivers is necessarily going to give you better sound when there's bigger factors at play here, such as the driver quality, the coherency between the drivers, and the tuning and whether it's close to your preference. But by the end of this review, you'll have seen all the driver quality metrics, the tuning measurements, and you'll have got the opportunity to hear what each of these buds sounds like for yourself, courtesy of a binaural sound test. And that's precisely where we're going to start. As always, it's better to listen to these with your headphones on. So just a short clip there, but long enough to match what we heard with what we saw on the graphs, with each of these buds, as predicted, having their own individual characteristics based on that target sound. On the H3, something that perhaps doesn't come across on these samples is the imaging and how precise it is on this model. It's easily SoundPEATS' best yet and is markedly better than even the Opera 03 and Opera 05. But that default tuning is a bit honky and nasally and rolls off the trebles too early, not showing off the full capability of those balanced armature drivers. EQ is very much a personal thing, but these were the settings that I used to open the sound out a little bit and make it a bit more versatile. This adjusts the tonal balance a little bit, makes it a bit brighter, and gives the trebles that little bit of extra detail that you should be expecting with 2 BAs. That EQ gives them a similar sound profile to the Opera 05, but you can just tell that the coherency between the drivers is much better. You get a flavour for just how good this driver combination is by the group delay measurements, which are amongst the best of any TWS I've ever tested. It's such a shame that that default tuning really doesn't do it justice, because the snappy transients and almost holographic soundstage make this a real standout option if sound is all you care about. With the Golden Ages 2, they're easily the most natural sounding of the 3. Their default pop EQ setting is actually more like a reference EQ, giving you a very organic timbre and natural tonality that lends itself well to a multitude of different genres. There's little to no coloration on vocals and instruments, which will definitely attract the purists. Out of the box, the tuning is just an iteration on previous tunings that you'll have seen and heard with the Mocha and the Space Travel 2. But the planar driver just meshes with this tuning so much better. So if you were looking to buy one of Moondrop's 3 core TWS, which you can see here, for me, the Golden Ages 2 definitely justifies that extra expenditure. It certainly isn't one for bass heads though, and for some, that note weight might be a little lightweight, forcing you to reach for the EQ. If you watch my review on Moondrop's Pill, you'll have heard me waxing lyrical about the online interactive DSP EQ tool that's built into their app. It makes EQing these buds an absolute dream, so if you wanted something less referencey and a bit warmer sounding, then copy the settings that you can see here on the left. QCY's N70 is the most fun, energetic and vibrant of the three, and this lends itself really well to electronic genres. The MEMS driver gives it a huge advantage from an audio perspective over their previous release, the Mellow Buds Pro, particularly in the trebles. Cymbals and shimmers always sounded just a little bit metallic on the Mellow Buds Pro. They're much cleaner on the N70, but in trying to show off the capabilities, you might find they're slightly overbaked and might get fatiguing over time. So again, with this EQ setting, that brings it back in line a little bit and might be better for long-term use. The staging isn't as expansive as on the SoundPEATS H3, and the tonality isn't as natural as the Golden Ages 2, but at the price of just around £35, it's fantastic value for money. So 3 sets and all delivering stellar audio in their own unique way. When it comes to sound quality, i.e. the capability, performance and coherency of the drivers, all of these buds are deserving entrance into the top 6 of the audio league table under $100. Despite its uninspiring out-of-the-box tuning, the SoundPEATS H3 takes the cake with its exceptional technical prowess. Its imaging and almost holographic soundstage put it a cut above the other two, and disregard that harmonic distortion figure for the H3 by the way, because it's only applicable at 20 Hz. Beyond that, distortion is well under control. Both QCY and SoundPEATS give you extra personalisation in the form of a hearing test, but both were a bit clunky and neither gave me particularly good results. Moondrop's secret sauce is their online interactive DSP, as I mentioned previously, that has a community style selection of different EQs to different target curves that you can then go in and tailor to your own specific requirements using their parametric EQ. Both QCY and Moondrop offer spatial audio. Moondrop's effect is slightly more subtle than QCY's, although you do get the addition of the options of 30-degree and full angle tracking. Sharp head turns or moving your whole body left or right can confuse it though, and it becomes very quickly unusable. When it comes to active noise cancellation, all of these buds have it to varying degrees if you look at their marketing material, but we don't pay too much attention to that, instead putting them through a few real life tests which you're actually going to hear for yourself now. The first one being in a coffee shop where there'll be comparisons to other similarly priced and similarly performing sets on the market, and there's a second bonus one there on a subway as well.
ANC on. ANC on. ANC on. 降噪模式
Noise cancelling.
ANC on. ANC on.
So as you heard there, all of these buds do an adequate job of noise reduction in both of those scenes, although they do fall a little way behind one of the better players in this field, the Realme Buds Air 7 Pro. Whilst you couldn't really hear the difference, I felt that the QCY N70 actually reduced more noise than both the H3 and the Golden Ages 2, but it would be very much fit dependent and dependent on the adaptive ANC mode, which would sometimes be really strong, but it would take a little while to kick in, hence why it perhaps wasn't reflected on the simulated ears. The H3 is probably the pick of the three when it comes to ANC, purely down to consistency, and definitely helped by the passive isolation you get from a deeper fit. The performance of all three is about mid-range, some way behind the likes of the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC and Realme Buds Air 7 Pro, but not bottom of the barrel either. With transparency mode, I was actually quite surprised by the performance of all three, outdoing some popular sets like the Earfun Air Pro 4 and Soundcore Liberty 4 NC. With all three of these sets, I was able to hold a conversation in a shop and hear pretty much every word without any problems, which is a big improvement from some of those older sets. The N70 did perform slightly better than the other two, handling wind noise through the mics a little better. Their vocal mode allowed me to hear voices clearer than the one on the SoundPEATS H3, and their strength meter, which is set on level 4 by default, which is the ideal level really, gives you more control. If you ramp it up to 5 or 6, you can definitely let more sound through, but it sounds very artificial, putting quite a bit of white noise over the top. Even so, for budget sets, I was pretty impressed with all three.
If you're using QCY's N70 for calls, perhaps you're on the daily commute, on your way into work, school or college, and you've got the sound of nearby conversations, a little bit of wind, traffic noise as well, then this is how you can expect them to perform on your calls in this busy outdoor type of scene. Do the lack of stems count against the SoundPEATS H3 when it comes to making and taking calls? I'll let you be the judge. This is how they perform when you're in a busy outdoor scene. Maybe you're on the daily commute and you've got a mixture of a little bit of breeze coming through. You've got traffic noise, all of those sorts of noises that will complicate your call if you're traveling to or from work, school, college, etc. And this time it's the turn of Moondrop's Golden Ages too. It's a different day, but it's the same variables that I've got going on around me. The same sorts of noises from lots of indistinct chatter from conversations nearby, as it's on a Friday and it's in commuting hours, so it's very, very busy. You've also got the sound of traffic and everything else, just the same as what you heard in the N70. And this time we're testing how each of the buds performs in a busy indoor scene, namely a coffee shop where you've got a mixture of conversations nearby, indistinct chatter, sounds of the baristas making coffee and the sound of music coming through the speakers. That was the QCY N70, and this is Moondrop's Golden Ages too. Now the reason why we do multiple tests of the mic in different types of scenarios, because typically they'll perform differently in different types of scene, have different strengths and weaknesses. On the first test, the Golden Ages 2 seem to perform better in this scene, but I'll let you be the judge. Finally, we've got SoundPEATS H3 at a little bit of a disadvantage, as I said previously, due to the lack of stem, but they have got built-in AI voice reduction in the mic. So it'll be interesting to hear how each of these buds performs in this busy indoor scene. If you're using your buds in this kind of scene, a true reflection of what we can expect.
As you heard, you can probably get by making and taking calls with all three of them, but none of them are hitting the heights of something like the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 4. The Golden Ages 2 were the biggest surprise though, because typically Moondrop's buds haven't been that good on calls, but as you heard, they gave the cleanest representation of your voice and a good balance with environmental noise reduction, which was a little bit too aggressive on the N70, as you heard in the coffee shop scene, made it sound a little bit muffled. All three sets allow you to switch to ambient mode through their apps while you're on a call though, which is a big plus. Looking now at the design and starting with the case, the N70 has a clear advantage when it comes to portability. It's also the only one of the three that supports wireless charging, which is a massive plus at its price point. The stems sit in the middle, which might be counterintuitive to some users if you're used to them being on the outside, but for a budget set, it feels well built. It is a bit boring though, something that can't be said about the retro cassette style that has been given to the design of the Golden Ages 2 case. And as someone who unfortunately is old enough to remember cassette players, this particularly appealed to me. The bud's square shape though means that it is sometimes a challenge getting them back in the case when you're only using one hand. If you're not bothered about that cassette styling, you could always use the protective cover that Moondrop have included here, which is a handy addition. The H3 case is a little bit chunky and bits of it look nice, but bits of it also feel cheap, but generally is fairly well built. With the design of the bud itself, it's meant to be modelled on a custom IEM style design, and its deeper insertion means that you can use IEM ear tips like the Dunu S and S tips, which also fit in the case, which is a big plus. They wear slightly chunky, but they never feel like they're falling out of your ears like the Opera 05 did. The N70 and Golden Ages 2 are just your typical stem-based designs. It's a plus that the Golden Ages 2 continues that retro sort of feel, but the dark grey bits at the top of the stem just look a little bit ugly, meaning they lack a little elegance and look a bit kitsch. But they're super comfortable and I did get a good seal with them. The fingerprint magnet N70 also has a little bit of a shoulder at at the top. They're the shallowest fitting of the three, making them arguably the most comfortable, at least for me, for longer listening sessions. The supplied ear tips though aren't as good as the Moondrop ones, and they don't give the best seal. I'm still on the lookout for a third-party set that will fit the case. I put all three sets through the 100 jumping jacks test, and all of them managed to get to 100 without any hiccups. Kind of shook my head a little bit at the end as well, and they still weren't falling out, which suggests good stability. The N70 and the H3 are IPX5, but the Golden Ages 2 doesn't have an official IP rating. If you're someone who values features and functions, well, QCY have them in abundance. The control customization is practically limitless. You can adjust the beep volume, there's fit detection, a find my headset feature, and plenty of other stuff you'll probably never use. It also has good Google Fast Pair integration, so within Android settings you can easily and quickly see how much battery is remaining and switch between your different active noise cancellation modes. It also has in-ear detection sensors, although I switched these off as I found them a little bit unreliable. The Golden Ages 2 also give you the ability to adjust the prompt volume, and like the others they do have multi-point connectivity, but they're the only ones that give you a device list in the app, which is really good to see at this price point. You can select your codec within this section of the app as well, but I found I still had to go into developer options within my device to confirm it. The H3 are the least feature centric of the three, only really offering you gaming mode. When it comes to latency, all three of these sets actually do pretty well even with gaming mode switched off. All three products offer high-res codec support, but for the negligible improvement you get in sound, personally I'd stick to AAC. Sets with more complex driver arrangements are typically more power hungry. Even switching ANC on and turning the volume up had a massive impact on single use playtime. There are other compromises too. You can't even use the app when you use LC3 on the Golden Ages 2, and you can't use gaming mode or multipoint when you're using LDAC on the H3. For some, these compromises might be a step too far, and it really does come down to how much you value those extra few percentage points in terms of perceived audio quality. The H3 give exceptional audio quality, as we've already talked about at length, and decent ANC, but they're big and bulky, not the most versatile, and are the least featured of the three, missing a few things that ideally you would like to see in a set of earbuds. Stuff like wear detection, wind noise reduction, a device set within the app when you're using multipoint, and better battery life, although I appreciate it's difficult when you're cramming in that many drivers. The Golden Ages 2 has a good balance between features and audio quality, and is Moondrop's most all-round set yet. But their square nature means they're a little bit of a pain to get in and out of the box, and the app experience, whilst much improved, is still a bit clunky. The online interactive DSP, for example, was down for an entire day recently. QCY's N70 though is an exceptional budget all-rounder with big improvements in both the audio and ANC over their previous iteration, the Melobuds Pro. It's a wash with features, some of them more reliable than others, although that's not altogether unexpected given the price, and they're probably the best value of the three. At £35, an absolute steal. So three very credible options, all three of which have their merits, and all three represent a big step forward when it comes to budget audio. Hopefully this video has given you some food for thought and has provided you enough ammunition to make the right selection for you. Give the video a like if you found it useful, enjoyed it, neither or both, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.